Hey guys! In today's video, I'm excited to take you along as I build my second custom DIY hamster cage, this one measuring 4 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet for my Syrian hamster Strudel. It's a big upgrade from his old setup and I can't wait to show you the process of creating his new home. As you can see, my dad is helping me with this cage too. We're attaching the side panels to the base and making sure they're aligned at 90 degrees using a right angle tool to keep everything square. We're also drilling pilot holes, which are small guide holes that help prevent the wood from splitting and make it easier to screw everything together. I'm using birch wood, which is perfect for hamsters because it's strong and completely safe. It's really important to use hamster-safe wood so you're not exposing them to harmful chemicals or oils. Some other good options are poplar and aspen wood, which are both safe and non-toxic too. We're attaching the back panel and drilling pilot holes first to guide the screws as well. After flipping it over, you can really see everything starting to come together. Next up is sanding the whole structure. Sanding smooths out all the rough edges, which makes it safe for the hamster. Once sanding's done, I'm wiping off the dust to make sure everything's clean and ready for painting. For paint, I'm using Ecos Pet Safe paint. It's called the Gloss Pet Dwelling Paint specifically. This stuff is amazing because it's non-toxic, VOC-free, and doesn't have any harsh chemicals or odors. I'm applying the first coat with these 2 rollers and my boyfriend is helping me out. It also requires far fewer coats than some of the other types of paints I've used. While I'm finishing the second coat, I wanted to quickly chat about hamster cage sizes. The recommended minimum is 100 by 50 by 50 centimeters or about 40 by 20 inches. Strudel's old cage didn't meet that and I felt honestly terrible once I learned how much space he needed. I even tried connecting 2 cages, but that caused issues. Now with this new cage, he'll have 7,277 square centimeters of space, and I'm just glad I can finally give him what he deserves. He moved in a few weeks ago, it just took me a little bit to get this video up. Jumping back into the video, we're sealing the cracks with 100% silicone. I used white this time instead of clear, and I actually prefer it. Now we're moving on to attaching the 4 foot by 2 foot acrylic plexiglass to the front. Right now it's still covered by the brown protective paper. We're starting by drilling small pilot holes with a small drill bit and then we'll follow up with a larger drill bit. We've peeled back just a bit of the corner to get started. For each of these 4 corners, we're using larger sheet metal screws for extra hold, and for the spaces in between, we're using smaller metal screws. Acrylic can be tricky. It's important to go slow and be super careful when drilling and screwing in. We had the plexiglass actually crack on the previous cage, so taking your time here can really help prevent that. Now we're applying clear silicone to further secure the acrylic plexiglass to the base and side panels. I'm using clear silicone here so it doesn't interfere with the view inside the cage, and it also helps seal any gaps along the edges. Moving on to the epoxy layer. To mix the epoxy, you combine part A the resin and part B the hardener at a 1-to-1 ratio. This is super important because the molecules in each part need to match up evenly for the epoxy to harden properly. You'll want to stir for at least 5 minutes to make sure everything is fully mixed. We're doing something fun for this base. I went to Walgreens and printed a poster-size version of my YouTube banner to place on the bottom of the cage. This was actually my dad's idea and he was really excited to show that you can put almost anything under epoxy. Once the epoxy sets, it forms a hard, clear layer, sealing the design in place. After spreading it, let it dry for a full day. Just make sure to avoid high temperatures or humidity, which gave us trouble on the previous cage, but we got it right this time. Yay, now we're on to the lid. In the picture on the left, you can see my Home Depot haul for the lid. I picked up poplar wood, 2 48-inch pieces, and 3 19.5-inch pieces for the frame. We also grabbed some chicken coop mesh wire, some hinges, metal attachment plates, and a white handle to attach later. After gluing the pieces of wood together, we're using the right angle tool again to make sure the frame is perfectly aligned at 90 degrees. The clamps help keep everything in place while the glue dries. Since this lid is larger, we added an extra piece of wood across the middle for support. This just makes sure it's balanced and strong enough to hold up over time. I'm opening up the paint can, giving it a good mix, and pouring it into the tray. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the footage of me painting the back of the lid frame, but don't worry, you will see the front very soon. Now I'm grabbing the chicken coop mesh wire. I'm cutting and measuring the wire to fit the frame, making sure to leave enough extra on the edges so the wood will sit directly on the top. I'm stapling the mesh down, making sure there are no gaps where strudel could squeeze through. I actually had to switch staple guns halfway through since the larger one was hurting my hand, but now everything is secure. Next, I'm reinforcing the structure by adding metal plates where the wood connects. I'm using both corner plates and straight plates, and the screws go through these to keep the frame sturdy. The mesh I'm using has very small holes, which is great for making sure no hamster can squeeze through. In my previous video, I mentioned that I'm planning to get a Roborowski hamster, and you can actually see the cage I built for it in that video. Since Robos are much smaller than Syrian hamsters like Strudel, having tiny mesh holes is really important to prevent escapes. Even though Strudel doesn't necessarily need mesh this fine, I'd rather be safe than sorry, so I use the same mesh for this cage too. Also, feel free to leave any tips in the comments about caring for a Roborowski or anything specific I should know, because I have never had one before. I've been reading up on them, and it's been interesting to learn about their needs. Since they're from actual desert environments, sand is really important. I also found out that their diet is different from Assyrians, which makes sense since Syrians come from more arid regions but not true deserts. Okay, now we're adding a lip to the lid now to close the small gap between the plexiglass and the frame. This helps ensure that Strudel can't get through the space, making it more safe for him. It doesn't look like it covers a significant amount here, but once everything's together, you'll see that it does actually bridge the gap. Now we're painting the mesh and the metal plates on the bottom so everything matches up. We'll also paint the top of the lid white. Painting was my favorite part. I've always loved art, so it's just something that I enjoy. Don't get me wrong, I love putting it all together, but sometimes the building and the tools and everything can be a little stressful. I put the lid on top of the cage, and now we're attaching with hinges. I'm using different hinges than the ones I originally picked out. Those didn't fit. These hinges actually bend back more than 90 degrees, giving the lid extra flexibility for when it opens. I'm penciling in where I need to drill the holes for the hinges. Make sure when drilling not to go through the back panel because it's only 1/2 inch thick. The little piece of blue tape on the drill bit helps measure how far to go. Also random but cool, this magnetic dish that holds all the screws. The screws for the top and bottom are different lengths, so the one on the top is longer because we have 2.5 inches of wood, whereas the bottom is only 1/2 inch. And checking that it opens and closes smoothly. And to finish it off, I'm attaching a white handle to the top of the lid. It's a simple addition, but makes opening and closing the cage so much easier. Here's the final cage. It measures 48 inches by 24 5/8 inches and is 25 inches in height, including the lid. We've got the acrylic panel in front, the reinforced lid, and the personal logo on the bottom. I am obsessed with how this one turned out. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to check out my other video where I built the previous cage, and stay tuned for upcoming videos where I'll be setting up these cages, including the new Roborowski hamster that's coming soon. Lots more to come, so I hope you guys will stick around.